Have you ever wondered what it's like to own your own business? Be your own boss? Welcome to Season 7 of Business Mentorship, Keepin It Real, where we meet with corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owner and join us as part of the shareyourstoriesonline series. Hello, I'm Trish Tonak, and today we're going to meet a small business owner, celebrate their great idea, and introduce you to the person behind the logo. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to a special edition of Keeping It Real, panel discussions with business owners who join us to discuss topics trending in business. All of our guests are experts in their field and join us to share thought leadership and expertise as small business owners with proprietary programs created with vision and purpose. Our topic, the importance of trademarking your great idea. And I'd like to introduce you to our expert panel. Gucci Erasmus is the founder of Gem Power, a Renaissance woman educated in several coaching frameworks, working on a new program designed for women to improve communication, empower, and build confidence. Sylvia Silk is the founder of Path to Joy, who is in the process of trademarking a couples therapy program called the Joanna Cara Method, designed to rebuild connection and rekindle joy. And Heather Boyd, who is the founder and visionary behind Pillar IP. She is a licensed trademark agent and IP consultant. She and her team focus on securing profitable assets with a sustained approach aligned with business goals, corporate reputation, and distinctive intellectual property. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to Keeping It Real.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You know, this topic is so important to small business owners who step outside their comfort zones to create IP that not only speaks to their target market, but has a focus on making a difference in the world. And as we begin our discussion today, I'd like to recognize that every business owner starts their business with a great idea, but creating something truly unique is a whole other process. So Gucci, your program is an innovative communication tool. When did you realize that you had something unique?
I designed the Hidden Gems method really as something for myself. So I was moving from a lot of one-on-one coaching to working more with groups. And I realized that a lot of groups fail women. So I guess that was in the back of my mind. It was bubbling over. And then I put together many things that I had used over my career into a method to use myself. But I also knew I needed to pilot it to make sure that I wasn't just convincing myself that my good idea was fabulous. So I started doing some pilot sessions with groups of women and then started to share my journey with a few other women in business who are, veterans, 20, 25 years in business. And two women in particular in very different types of businesses said to me, that is a really unique idea. And two things. One is you should not keep it just for yourself. We can see coaches, therapists, healers, and other people who work with groups using it. But two, you don't want someone to take it from under your nose because you could commercialize it and it's really, really powerful. So get on the IP train. And that was quite startling for me because actually those two conversations really opened my mind in a very different way to what I was expecting.
Right. And I love that what you did was pilot it first and got that positive reinforcement before you decided down that road. So that's probably a really good point for our viewing and listening audience. Mm-hmm. Heather, you work with many business owners who have IP that they'd like to protect, but how do you help them define whether it's worth the investment? Because it is a monetary investment to trademark your great idea.
Sure, it's a monetary investment, but it's worth it because to not protect it could lose you so much more. Your reputation, it could lose your method of making money to begin with. There's theft that goes on constantly. So my approach is to listen to the clients, to determine what it is that they're doing and how they can potentially monetize that And when we can determine that it is monetizable, then we can assess whether it's protectable under IP laws. So copyright, trademark, industrial design, patenting, and that's so forth.
Yeah, because it is a bigger topic, right? I mean, there's lots of various different ways that you can protect your IP, and we're going to talk obviously today about trademarking. But good point that you really do need to investigate some of the other options before you make a final decision, right?
Yeah.
And Sylvia, what about you? Because you've also developed this program as a practitioner to help your target market. So when did you decide that what you had was proprietary, or did you set out to create something that was truly unique?
So I've been in practice for almost 40 years. No, it can't be that, but in any event, and working with couples on and off throughout that process or time frame. And last summer, I was working with a business coach around my packaging, and we came up with the Joanna Cara method. I came up, she helped me find it and discover it, and realized it's really unique and different in how you do couples therapy. It's not about communication. It's about going to a core issue and resolving it in the session with the partner present and being in a compassionate frame. And so at that point, my coach said, you really should trademark this. And so then I talked to Heather Boyd and a few others and got some information.
Right. And you know what I think the nice commonality between both you and Gucci is that you had someone else who substantiated the fact that this was indeed something that you should pursue. And I think that's really important because, you know, we either sometimes think that, well, you know, this is not important. I'll use it in my own business for my own purpose. And we may miss opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
Yeah.
Gucci, you're actually thinking of a whole taking yours as you take it out into the world, perhaps licensing it to other practitioners, correct?
Oh, well, that's also been a very, very interesting journey, which I am not fully through yet. But my objective is to try and get as many people who are working with women already to have a way to do really great group work.
Right.
And so I've looked at various models, again, with the help of the business women's community, which is just fabulous, and looked at things like, you know, I don't want to put myself at this part of my career in line for anything that's super risky.
Right.
But I do know that my methodology has a really great pedigree. So we've looked at certification, which is a long, involved, and expensive process. And then we've looked at licensing and franchising and all those kinds of things. And all of that, for me personally, just feels like it's too much for what I really want to do in the time frame I want to do it.
Right.
So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be training facilitators, and they will get my package of materials, content, whatever you like to call it, white labeled. So they can then put their own brand on it. But there is a specific kind of obviously agreement that goes with that about them not selling it on, etc. But
Sure.
I'm just so grateful for all the women who've walked before me who have been able to share these things, because to be honest, I think, you know, men and women come at things differently. And the first man I spoke to about this, he said to me, "Oh, you better be ready to invest at least 100,000 in this." And it's, you know, and what I've discovered is, yes, it's an investment. It's, for me, it hasn't been that huge. It's been a manageable investment. And
Right.
I've also learned many things that are helping me do this in a very smart way,
Right.
so that my method can get out in the world and be really useful to women who are already working with clients.
Right. Now, Heather, maybe you can explain to us because, you know, Gucci's touched on a number of various different options that are available but from the basic standpoint, what's the difference between a trademark and a copyright?
Well, a trademark is an an identification of source. So a trademark is a mark, insignia, logo, whatnot
Right.
that points to a source of specific goods and services. So when we're filing an application for registration of a trademark, you have to identify the goods and services that you are going to use or you are using the trademark with. the trademark. So because you can only get registration if your mark is within the criteria, not confusing, it's not a name or a surname of someone who's living or dying, has been dead for the last 30 years. It's not clearly descriptive or deceptively misdescriptive, or a generic term for those marks in association with the goods and services. So there's a whole bunch of, that's why examination is so difficult, and you run up most difficulties you run up with in the examination process is from SIPO, not from third parties. So there's that. Now, copyright refers to the content of an artistic creation.
Ah,
So if you've got a picture, the picture in behind me, that's an artistic creation painted.
right.
So the content of it is protected by copyright, but the title of it is not protected under copyright. So this could be, red umbrella in an Italian street kind of thing.
Right.
That title would never be protected, just like you see so many different books that have the same title on them, different movies that have the same title with very small variances or whatnot. It's
Right.
because it's the content of what's written inside the movie or the book that
Mhm.
is protected under copyright. So then in Canada, the title of the book, the title of the movies, the franchise, whatnot, that would be protected through trademark.
That's a really great differentiation because I think sometimes we get confused with the difference between trademark and copyright. Now, Sylvia, I know that you've started this process. Has anyone given you an idea as to how long this may take, or how far down the rabbit hole, so to speak, are you at this point?
So I applied on Halloween of last year.
Mhm.
And then in mid-November, I got a form letter back saying there was an error. I phoned in. They said, just wait. That's just a form letter. Don't get worried about it.
Mhm.
And in about 8 months, you'll have somebody will have another contact with you.
Oh.
So I'm in, I believe, what is the most common phase of trademarking in Canada.
Mhm.
Patience, patience, patience.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And Gucci, how far along are you in the process?
So I'm probably a few steps ahead of you, Sylvia. I know, and it's really amazing because I was told that I would have to wait about 5 months. So I don't, and I'm just trying to think when we did the original application went in, probably at the end of September last year. So, not much ahead of you. But all of a sudden, literally in the last 3 weeks, I've had a whole bunch of things hit my inbox, and I know that I actually have to go through all of them and see what they are. I think I've had 5 different communications from different offices and what have you. But when I briefly read through each of them, nothing looked like really that I should panic. So I'm waiting to get back together with Cynthia and say, right, Cynthia, let's go through these. What are the next steps? I
Right.
was interested to see also there's quite a long window by which you have to respond to some of these things. So I just know with the contest that was from the BC Gaming Corporation, I have to respond by October 31st this year. So
Oh,
I actually think that's pretty fair. It's not like
yeah.
you have to do this next week. I mean, when you're a small business or a solopreneur like I am, when any of these things come and they say we need to know tomorrow, it can just really put a bomb in your work. So I'm
Mhm.
happy to say it feels like it's not a panic. It's something I can calmly work through.
Perfect. And Heather, is there a rule of thumb? I mean, clearly, you're working on the administration and paperwork and expert side of the trademarking. When a client first comes to you and says, I'm thinking about doing this, you've identified that they do have something that you can move forward into trademark. Is there a rule of thumb about how long it takes, or is it truly hit and miss?
No, there's definitely a rule of thumb. From the time you file the application, SIPO has now gotten the examination phase down to about 8, 9 months. What Sylvia was talking about was a pre-assessment letter that she received stating that the goods and services may not be in form for acceptance. Um, excuse me. And it sounds like Gucci received an office action. So the mark has been examined and they've cited this official mark as standing in her way currently. So there are ways to
Right.
overcome that.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you get the office action, it's a 6-month window to prepare and file a response. And then if you're successful in your response, persuasive to the examiner that your mark should be examined, it gets approved for registration. And then within 5 to 8 weeks, it gets advertised in the Trademarks Journal. And then there's a 2-month window of opportunity for third parties to oppose your application should they just deem your application not, should they want to oppose you, so not want you to reach registration. If no oppositions are met, then it automatically gets registered. So the time frame from start to finish, assuming no complications are met, can be in the neighborhood of 15 to 24 months max.
Right. Well, that's really good to know because as Gucci mentioned, when you're taking your great idea through this process, you're still running a business,
Oh, yeah.
right? So, I mean, it can, you don't want it to sideline everything else that you're doing. So good to hear. And thank you for sharing that, Gucci, that they do give you a reasonable amount of time to respond to these types of things. Now, here's the $1 million question, no pun intended. But Sylvia, at some point in time, do you intend to sell this proprietary information and your trademark? Is that something that you've looked into? Is it possible?
It may be possible. It's not something that I've looked into. I would be thinking more around going through and doing training other clinicians
Right.
in the methodology versus
Right.
selling it.
Right, which is similarly to Gucci, right? I mean, in the short term, you intend to provide the information to other practitioners or other coaches who can use it in their practice. But you made mention at this stage in your career, is this something that you're thinking of? Is the trademark process the purpose for future sale and revenue?
For me, I think for any business owner, if there's a point in time when you actually want to either pass your business on to someone in your family or sell it or whatever, having some kind of material assets beyond just desk chairs and computers is a good thing. So intellectual property. And I recall some of when I was still consulting, we did mergers and acquisitions. I was in the mergers and acquisitions space. And I remember some organizations got a way higher price because they had IP that wasn't really tested in the market, but they had IP. And so that sort of attracted a bigger price tag, if you like, for selling. So, I mean, that's probably not my intention, but who knows?
Right.
I have a very good friend in the United States who said to me the other day, girl, if you've got a great idea, it's going to have you by the throat until it's in the world. And I think that's probably, Sylvia, for you and I, very similar. Years of doing something, we suddenly realize that we've got all the things that we can put together and curate or integrate to make something really, really powerful. And it's not going to let us go. I mean, this has just been like a stone in my shoe until I've really got it created.
Now, Heather, is that a whole different area of the business for you? Is when someone like Gucci and Sylvia come forward and say, okay, I've been at this for a number of years. I'm ready to sell my business. How do I sell my trademark?
So trademarks can be assigned to anyone at any time, even while you're in the middle of the application process.
Wow.
And what you do is you're selling the goodwill that goes with it, right? So the idea, the goodwill, and everything, you're transferring your reputation to someone else
Right.
for the purposes of obviously making money. So we do a lot of when I'm talking to initial clients is talking about what their succession plan is, particularly when it comes to coaches and whatnot. Because if you're the only person who is providing that service, then you are the business, and it's really much more difficult to sell it unless you have created processes and procedures that other people can easily follow, which it sounds like Gucci and Sylvia have done. So,
Right.
so a succession plan can be either training people But at the end of the day, when you retire, you're still selling your brand to someone else.
Mm.
It's a form of
Right,
sale, right?
right, right. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And what I love about this discussion is that there's some real foundational elements that are similar. Like Gucci's went out and did some test piloting, and Sylvia's using, various different individuals in her network who have pushed the envelope forward. What tips would you share with our viewing and listening audience as they perhaps prepare for the process? Sylvia, is there anything that you can share with someone who may be listening to us today and thinking, wow, this is, a lot more than I thought. I really do have to start to do my research. Would you give them a tip or a tool that they may be able to start the process with?
I think it's really important to speak with experts and really get the real information, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and myths out there.
Right.
And thankfully, I could reach out to Heather and a few others and have really quality conversations because they were so expert in the field.
Right.
That really helped me to move forward.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I think I would have stalled out, honestly, and not done anything.
Yeah,
without that
and that's a
advice.
really good point. We can all go online and start Googling information or going to whatever search engine that we may have in our repertoire of research tools. But the one-to-one or face-to-face communication with someone who is an expert in the field obviously has to occur at some point, right?
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. And Gucci, what about you? What would be your tip to share with someone in our viewing and listening audience who may be thinking of starting the road of trademarking their great idea?
So I definitely would second everything that Sylvia says. And one of the things that I have done for myself is set up what I call an advisory board. So I have 3 women in business, no money changed hands. I just approached them. I said, you're in very different businesses. You've got lots of experience with the Canadian legal system, etc. And I would love to, now and then be able to tap you. And it's been great because I've been able to help them. So it's very reciprocal. So I think that's extremely helpful. The other thing I think is just do some of your own research and see if you can figure out how unusual is what you've got, in the world of your particular industry sector and so on. Because sometimes I think as women, well, I think 2 things that women typically do. One is we sort of downplay. It's like, oh, well, this is just my little way of doing this. No, maybe this is your genius idea that no one has ever thought of before. So I would definitely do some research. And the other thing I would say for women particularly is don't be scared to fail. It's so interesting, again, the male-female difference. A man does something, it bombs or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm on to the next thing. And they joke about it at the golf club and what have you. And I think just we've been so conditioned to be afraid to actually say that didn't work, but just go for it. And if it doesn't work, you know what? It's not the end of your life and legacy. There's something else out there. And boy, you've got lots of other things that you can create value with.
And that's a really good point, because every small business owner, as I said at the beginning of our discussion, starts their business with a great idea, right? I mean, we all step outside the comfort zone to start with, to even move from corporate leadership into small business ownership. So that's a really great point. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Heather, I know, without being too technical, is there something that you would share with our viewing and listening audience as the person that they may eventually come to get the expert opinion on how to move forward with the application process? Is there some piece of advice that you can share with folks who are in the early stages?
My best piece of advice is don't become emotionally attached to your brand until you know that you've got it.
Right.
So, because it can be, a lot of people put a lot of heart and soul into their branding, but then they don't search it. They don't determine that there's another company out there, perhaps, that has an official mark that could stand in their way, and that there's a cost value to moving beyond that in order to get your heart and soul kind of thing. And sometimes that cost just does not measure up to the value of your brand. So, that's the biggest thing. Don't get emotionally attached to your brand until it's completely cleared. And the other thing is every mistake, as Gucci and Sylvia were saying, every mistake that you make is a learning process. And, you don't have to come to market with a unique idea, but you come to market with perhaps a better way of performing that than other people. And when you do that, that's how you build reputation. And reputation is where you're making money, not anywhere else.
Oh, that's really great advice. And, we could probably have a whole conversation talking just about reputation and how we build that. But thank you so much for sharing that, because that's really a very important component. One of the things that we do in our guest blog, both Sylvia and Gucci have participated in our guest blog. Both of them have been on the podcast before, so they're familiar. As we wrap up our discussion, I always ask folks to share a word of advice or something that will resonate with our viewing and listening audience. So I'd like to ask each of you to share one word that you would use for women in business today who are thinking of trademarking their great idea. Gucci, what would be your word?
I don't know if I have one word for it, but just go for it.
Yeah, very true. Sylvia?
Courage comes to mind, just having the courage to step into the spotlight and take ownership.
Yeah, that's very good advice. And Heather, what would your advice be for the women who are in business listening to us today?
Build value.
Oh,
When you build value, then you can actually afford to trademark and stuff.
Yeah, very true. Well, I'd like to thank each of you for joining me today and giving us a glimpse into some of the issues behind the scenes while sharing your expertise on the importance of trademarking your great idea. I know that our viewing and listening audience is going to have been taking some notes, pick up the pen and paper, and perhaps revisit our discussion today, because I think not only have you given us your heartfelt opinion on your journey, but you've provided us with some really great insight. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies, we appreciate your contributions as business owners and wish you continued success as you lead by example as both role models and mentors in your communities. And if you'd like to connect with one of our panel guests, you'll find their contact information in the description portion below. And to you, our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for tuning in for this edition of Keeping It Real. And I send my personal thanks to all of our sponsors and mentors for their ongoing support. Gucci, Sylvia, Heather, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to meeting you next time for another episode of Keeping It Real.